Hello everyone. Welcome to Mundo de Pilar-Aymara, the bridge between Galicia and Scotland. As you know, we're interviewing people from different groups from the Yes movement. And today I'm with Colette Walker. She's the leader of the Independence for Scotland's party. Hello, Colette.
Good evening.
Thank you for joining me today. Okay. The first question, of course, is when was your organization formed and the circumstances and the proposals that you have?
We decided after quite a lot of discussions with several people within the independence movement that we really needed another independence supporting party in Scotland due to our voting system that we have here, which is not first past the post, it's more representational, the Dion system. So we have like 2 votes in our Scottish elections. You have your what's classed as a constituency vote and then a regional list vote. So really the way our voting system is, you really should vote on one party for your constituency vote and then on another party for your regional list to basically enhance the voting, the parties that you're wanting into the Scottish Parliament. So if it's for independence, then you're really wanting as many independent supporting MSPs elected to the Scottish Parliament. And there really wasn't that many Scottish independent voting parties available for the voters to vote on. So after a lot of discussion, because setting up a political party is not an easy thing to do, but we decided that really it was our only option, and so we went ahead and started making up the constitution and everything that you have to do for setting up a political party. Really started it around about 3 years ago just now, to be fair. And then you submit it to the Electoral Commission, who governs the political parties, and we were approved in May of 2020, right at the start of the pandemic.
Wow.
So the main reason, again, is so that we were just going to be a regional list party. So voters had the option to vote for a main political party that they already knew, such as the SNP, but then they could vote for a regional list party to try and optimise the amount of MSPs that were elected to the Scottish Parliament.
Are your proposals more or less the same as the SNP or are different?
Different, very different. There's a few different policies here in Scotland, and it was one of the reasons, again, why quite a few people aren't voting for the SNP just now. But we've changed things around. There's other things that we are more interested in, such as maybe not necessarily full membership of the EU, but maybe looking at the option after an EA, different educational policies, different environmental policies. So, you know, there's different policies that we have there, and, you know, maybe utilising the option of when we become an independent country, having what's called universal basic income. So these are the different policies that we were looking at for an independent Scotland and what we could actually do with an independent Scotland.
Okay. Colette, now you're in a very difficult position after the Supreme Court sentence. Can I ask you, what do you think about that?
Sadly, it wasn't a surprise that they were going to say no, really. But we know that Westminster are not going to grant us the Section 30. They're kind of holding us against our will. It doesn't matter how many mandates the SNP, who are, again, the main party at the present moment, get. they're just going to constantly refuse it. So we have to go through some different routes at the present moment to show international awareness and make sure that we're going through every loop, but we really shouldn't have to be going through all these loopholes to be fair. But the Supreme Court was the start of a process. It wasn't a surprise. It's a disappointment, of course it's a disappointment, but it really didn't come as much of a surprise, to be fair.
In an open letter to the First Minister, the ISP called for a Scottish Constitutional Convention.
Mm-hmm.
And have you received any feedback from the First Minister?
No, sadly not, no. Again, disappointing, but not maybe surprising. There hasn't really been too much collaboration or willing to work with all the different indie parties that are coming around just now to try and fight for Scottish independence. When we were approved in May 2020, we set up the party and we set out our policies and we were making up our manifesto. And one of the main things that we were discussing to educate the voters leading up to the Scottish election in 2021 was about what a plebiscite vote was, what the supermajority at the Scottish election actually meant and what it could allow us to do. So we were trying to show them what the options by voting in a particular way could actually do for Scottish independence. We set up a petition for people to sign, and we asked the SNP, the Scottish Greens and any other independent voting supporting parties to sign the petition and allow us to try and go for the Scottish elections in 2021 to be a plebiscite election. Sadly, it fell really on deaf ears. It didn't go to a plebiscite in 2021. That again, you know, it was a lot of hard work. And we're now in the situation that we are, whereas we could have been a wee bit more further forward if it was a plebiscite last year.
You're not the only one who is calling for this Scottish Constitutional Convention. There are other parties, other organizations that are willing to do that. Do you see this Scottish Constitutional Convention happening? And well, do you see it's possible?
Everything is possible. It's whether the willing is there, and as you just said there, the likes of ourselves and other smaller political parties and yes movement groups are very keen to get around a table and have representation, because Scottish independence isn't about one political party. It's not about one politician. It's not about one person. Scotland is a broad church of people, and we have got varying different views. We live in a very democratic society. It's only right that we have representation from across the board, we might have different opinions on different policies, and we might have different opinions on what a Scotland being independent looks like. And that's only right. We live in a democracy. But again, you're only going to get that if you have the representation round a table, and you know, you work on strategies and you work on campaign material, etc. There has to be the proper representation there. So yes, we're very willing to get round the table, and we are desperate for Scottish independence. We want to move it forward, but we don't seem to be getting the invite at the present moment. But we will continue to try.
and what's the way forward for achieving Scottish independence? Because it's really difficult, and I see people are very disappointed. People are sometimes even, I would say, angry because the lack of movement and the lack of advance and the lack of plan, because it's not the Scottish government has not a plan A, they don't have a plan B or C or D. It looks like everything is 2 years ahead, 4 years ahead, the next election, next election, next election. And I see people are getting tired of that.
People are getting quite frustrated, and as I said earlier on, you know, we've had many mandates through all the different general elections and Scottish elections that we've had since the 2014 referendum, and every single time, you know, nothing has happened with those mandates. They've been basically wasted as far as a lot of people are concerned, because there hasn't been anything progressing. I know that this is a marathon and it's not a sprint kind of exercise, but now you know, I think we really have to start to really come together, and that's why we are calling for us all to come together and sing from the same song sheet and work together to get Scottish independence. We have other groups that are looking at the Constitution of Scotland, which is completely different to the UK Constitution. And we have our own constitution. We are a country in our own right. We are not a region of England, as some people like to say. We're not, you know, we're not a province. You know, there's all these mad names that Scotland get to say that we cannot be independent. We're a country in our own right. We have our own constitution. And so we have people involved in looking at the constitution, looking at the legalities of Scottish independence, and yeah, as I say, the Supreme Court was only the start. You know, The Hague is, you know, is the other option, but Westminster are just basically holding us against our will. Our resources are too favourable for England to let us go.
Yeah.
They try to make out that they prop us up financially. If we were such a financial burden to the UK government, they would allow us to have a referendum every year until we got our referendum, if we were such a financial burden to them. They know that we have all the natural resources that they don't have. We're an exporting country. They're an importing country. We are totally different to England. Our politics are completely different to England. The way we value our people in Scotland, we look after our people in Scotland, and again, due to our constitution, our people are sovereign, not the land. Our people are sovereign, and we look after our people, but our resources are being basically squandered and stolen from right underneath our feet.
Yeah, I remember the campaign, the Unionist campaign 2014, and they kept doing that, making that point that Scotland is too weak, too poor, and it's absolutely not true.
No, definitely not. When you think about, you know, set aside the oil and gas revenue, which has been totally squandered. If you look at Norway have sovereign wealth funds that we could have had. We've got more oil and gas than them. We've got nothing. We're in debt. You know, like the UK are in debt. The Norway is smaller than Scotland, but they have this massive sovereign wealth fund, pension schemes, etc. We have all our natural energy. We have our gin, our whiskey exports, our agriculture, our fishery. You know, there's, as I say, we are an exporting country. And again, with what's happening, you know, in 2014, we were promised that the only way we could stay in the EU was by voting to remain in the UK. So what happened 2 years later? We are now out of the EU. It's affecting our businesses. It's affecting our National Health Service. It's affecting our social care and the social work departments over here. We have a population that is getting older, living longer, needing more care. We've got disabled and vulnerable people at the present moment that are needing care, and they can't get it because there's no staff. And we can't get staff because we're now out of the EU. So if you think if we had got Scottish independence in 2014, we either could have stayed within the, you know, we would have still been within the EU. We could have been looking at either EFTA in the EEA. It's not just one option. There is always other options, but we could have had still the free movement of trade and people that could have kept our economy and services going very well.
Colette, speaking about unionists, today Gordon Brown has presented once again a new plan for Scotland that I find this not a new plan, is the same old, and he promised, he never delivers what he promised. But apart from that, he has no power whatsoever to promise anything for you. What do you think about? Do you take seriously these kind of interventions? Do you pay attention what he's saying?
I think, well, one, I wouldn't be listening to Gordon Brown anyway. And as you say, he's got no power whatsoever. He's not a member of Parliament. Why Keir Starmer's not making the statement, but it seems to be either Tony Blair or Gordon Brown for some reason. I think really they're trying to promote and try and get some votes back from in Scotland. They've got one Scottish MP in Westminster. Scotland used to be a Labour voting country many, many years ago, and they have now got one Labour MP down at Westminster. They're really trying to promote themselves and try and give the doubting, the borderline voters, the unsure voters, maybe another option that they think, that sounds quite good. Don't really need full independence. That's quite a lot of work. But there's this option. I think it's really trying to rally round to try and get more voters to vote for Labour in Scotland, because they haven't had the votes over the past couple of general elections. They've lost out. So I think it's just trying to spin the voting yarn, really, to try and reel some people in. Well,
let's see the result then. Colette Walker, leader of the ISP, Independence for Scotland's Party, thank you very, very much for your time. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you.
Very welcome. Thank you.